Hi guys, welcome to Reen's Place. Today we're making beef stew with dumplings. I started off by, I'm going to make it in my Ninja multi-cooker. You can do this on the stove top in like a big Dutch oven, maybe 6 or 8 quarts would work. I'm using some London broils that I got on sale. Normally, because it's just my husband and I, when I get them, I cut them into halves. This way it's enough for dinner and then another meal. I'm going to use 2 London broils, which would be 1 whole one, because my son is here visiting and I want him to be able to take leftovers home. So what I did already is I chopped 1 medium onion. I have the multi-cooker going with a little vegetable oil in it, getting hot so I could sear the meat. And I'm just going to remove the fat from this and put it in kind of small chunks. Again, you can do this however you like to do it, using whatever type of meat you prefer. This is just always on sale here, so this is what we buy. And again, if you're going to use the same cutting board, make sure you do your onion first. You don't want to do the meat and then cut vegetables on it. But, yeah, I'm just cutting the extra fat off. We're going to cook this low and slow, so whatever fat is left on will be, you know, it should dissolve while it's cooking, but I just like it leaner. And again, if you like big chunks of meat, make big chunks of meat, whatever you like. This is how we like it. We like bite-sized. So what we'll be doing is we'll be browning off this meat with some salt and pepper. And then when this is all nice and browned and there's no more liquid left in the pan, then we're going to go ahead and add the onions, top it off with some water to make some gravy, and we'll get the bouillon cubes in there for extra and added flavor. Okay. Okay. My daughter requested that we do this video because she lives out of state, and maybe she's going to make some beef stew and dumplings for her and her husband. And again, you can use whatever type of meat is cheap for you. If you don't mind so much marbling, keep it in, but we don't like it. Okay, there's one down. I'm going to finish doing the other piece of meat that I have, and then I'll bring you back when we're going to put it into the pot. Okay, be right back. Okay, so I'm back. This is my Ninja multi-cooker. Again, you can do this on your stove top. I have about 2 tablespoons of oil in there getting hot. It's very hot now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to throw the meat in. Hear that nice sizzle? Okay, the meat's in. And then while it's still raw like this, I want to season it nicely with some salt and pepper. It really does make a difference whether you season your meat or not. If you can't, for some reason, have salt because of dietary restrictions, then maybe you could use like a little Mrs. Dash in it or something like that, a vegetable-based product, but definitely some black pepper. And when you do it when it's raw like this, it really sears in the flavor while you're doing the sear on the outside of it, and it makes it taste really good. So we're not going to mess with it too much because you do want it to brown up. So we're going to leave it like that, see if everybody gets down in there touching the pan. If you had a smaller pan and a lot of meat, you'd want to do this in batches so that everything gets browned evenly. This is a big enough pan for this. It's 6 quart. So we'll let this get going for a minute. And I'm going to wash my hands real quick. Okay, so some other things that you're going to need at this point in the game is some thyme. I like thyme leaves. I like to add a little onion powder, although I am putting real onions in that as well. And I'm also going to use some beef bouillon cubes. You could also use the granulated beef bouillon, but I'm going to use the cubes because I have a lot left over and I want to start getting rid of them. Okay. So for this size pot of beef, I'm going to use 6 bouillon cubes. It seems like a lot, but you're going to be adding a lot of water to it because later on we're going to make dumplings. So when you make dumplings, you need extra gravy. Okay. And again, if you didn't have bouillon or the cubes, you could use something like a beef base with a little more extra water. Whichever you want to do is fine. Okay, so I'm going to give this a stir real quick. Let me come back over here. As you can see, some of it has a little bit of a brown sear on it. And what's going to happen here, even though the pan's really hot because you put all the raw meat in, it's bringing down the temperature of the pan, and you are going to get some juice in it from the beef, but you want to keep cooking it like this until that juice kind of evaporates. So I'm going to start opening these beef cubes, and if you want, I will come back when all the beef is browned up and we're ready to add the water and the seasonings. You ready? Okay, I just wanted to show you real quick. It's not done browning yet, but I wanted to show you what I was talking about when I said a lot of water is going to come out of the meat. You want to let it go. It's going to evaporate and it'll really bring a nice color on the meat. So it's not there yet, but don't be alarmed if you see that it gets like soupy looking. I didn't add anything to this. This is just the juice coming out of the meats while it's cooking. So we're going to leave it a little bit longer, and again, that's going to evaporate. That's why you keep the cover off. But I'll be back when it's all evaporated and it's browning nicely and you can see what I mean. Okay, so I'm back. The meat is getting really nice and browned. Looking really good. As you can see, all that water has evaporated. And I don't know if you can see the color of that meat or not, but that makes a big difference in the flavor of it and how it turns out. I love it when it's like all those little bits. It adds so much more flavor to your gravy. Okay, so to this now, I am going to add that onion that I chopped up earlier, and it's going to seem like a lot next to the meat, but this is really, again, enhances the flavor of the gravy, and I chopped it small, so it's really going to melt down into it. If you have people that don't like onion, you could use half, or you could just use onion powder, and then they don't know what's in there. Okay, so I just mixed that in a little bit. And the onion's the only thing you're really going to cook in here. I'm going to add my beef bouillon cubes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I boiled some water on the stove. You don't have to, but it just, I mean, everything's so hot already. Might as well keep it up to temperature. And I'm just going to almost cover it. And you will be adding more water to it from time to time as you check on it. Okay, so in here right now, again, the seasoned beef, an onion that was chopped, diced small, and about 6 bouillon cubes. And now I'm going to add to this some thyme leaves. And I'm just going to give it a sprinkle. Not too much. Again, you know, you could always add, but you can never take it out. And thyme is a kind of a strong flavor. Okay, so I have that much in for now. And I think that the thyme really makes it taste like stew. I'm going to put a little bit of onion powder in. And then while this is cooking and you're stirring it, you could taste the gravy every now and again and adjust it. If you think you need a little more thyme, if you think you need a little more onion powder, that's when you add it, when you stir it. So again, this is just like having it in a pot on the stove. I'm going to turn it to low as if I had it on top of my stove top. I'm going to give it a cover, and I will check on it maybe in an hour or so. Alright, we'll be back. Okay, I'm back. It's about 2 hours, 2.5 hours later. It's been simmering on low. take a piece out just to show you. Just to show you, it's very tender, like pot roast would be. Falls apart when you touch it. Perfect. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to add into it some potatoes. This is 2 large potatoes that I dice small. If your family likes bigger chunks, put them bigger chunks. And this is about a half a pound of baby carrots, again, which we put into small pieces because that's how we like it. That's going in. Give it a stir. And again, we're making dumplings with this, so at this point, those potatoes and carrots are going to cook probably half an hour, 40 minutes maybe, till they become fork tender. I'm just going to add a little bit more water to it so that when we do make the dumplings, we'll have plenty of gravy. I'm basically just, bringing the water point just above to the top of all the meat and vegetables. I'm going to put the cover back on, and we're going to check it back in about half an hour. So I'll come back. Okay, so the stew is just about done, and I'm getting ready to make some dumplings to put into it. What I have in my bowl is a cup and a half of all-purpose flour. To it, I'm going to add a little bit of salt and pepper. This is not an actual measuring spoon, it just says a tad. But I would say probably like half a teaspoon. And again, some black pepper, about the same. And I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Okay, and then at this point, I like to just add a little tiny bit of the thyme leaves that we used in the stew. If you're not a big fan of thyme, and I don't know how much it is, I just put a couple shakes in. If you're not a big fan of thyme, you can use parsley. Fresh if you have it, or just the dried parsley flakes works well too. I'm just going to use my spoon, and I'm going to mix up the dry. These are so simple, and they're so delicious. Okay, so that's all my dry stuff. Now to that, I'm going to use some regular margarine, 3 tablespoons. Again, you could use butter. I never made it with shortening, but I'm sure you could. What I like to do is I just like to cut it up into smaller pieces. If you have a pastry brush, a pastry cutter, you can use that. I just like to use a fork. I have a pastry cutter, but it's a pain to clean, and I'd rather just, oops. It works best right out of the fridge. You don't really want to soften the butter. You just want it cold when you do this. Use your knife. Cut it in smaller pieces. Okay, so basically what I like to do is I just like to get it started with a fork and squeeze it all together. And you just want to break it down to where the flour starts looking crumbly. It's not going to mix completely in, but you'll see when I'm done what it looks like. Get some of that off of there. Back into the flour she goes. Okay. Kind of crumbly. Now I think the milk is supposed to be about, let me look real quick. Yeah, it's about 3/4 of a cup of milk. I just kind of eyeball it, honestly. I like mine to look a little bit stickier than what the recipe calls for. So I just put it in a little bit of time, and I stir it around. But if you're not sure of how to do it, 3/4 of a cup to a cup would be a good starting off point. Like I said, I like mine a little bit moister just because I like the way they come out better. I think they come out a little bit more fluffy. There we go again there. And you can see some of the margin still in there. It's fine. It's kind of like a biscuit. Okay, it's done. See how it's kind of like there's a little bit of milk. You can see how it's kind of wet looking. This is perfect. Like a very sticky, moist, like biscuit batter is what it looks like to me. So I'm going to use this tablespoon that I have, and I'll get another one, and we'll use that to drop them into the stew. Let me go and move the camera over, and I'll bring the bowl over, and then we can drop these in the stew. So I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back at the stew. Take the cover off. I love this, by the way. This is a Curtis Stone lid holder. It's so nice. You know how like normally you put a pot lid on the counter and all the condensation makes a big watery mark? That's perfect. So you can see the stew is bubbling away nicely. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to take tablespoonfuls and drop them in here on top of the stew. Now you can see that my stew looks a little watery. That's because I'm adding the dumplings to it. If I was going to eat this just as stew, I would thicken that up with a little bit of a slurry of cornstarch and water. But I don't want it to be thick because I want it to thicken up through the flour that's in the dumplings, so it's not overly thick. And I just stick these on. They don't have to be pretty, they just have to be in there. I have my pot up. I brought it up to high just to get it going. I'm going to lower it down. And again, you'd be doing this on the stove if you don't have one of these multi-cookers. This is not a crock pot. It's on the stovetop setting. So you would do this on in a pot on your stove. And you'd want to bring your stew up to a boil while you're dropping the dumplings in, and then you want to lower it to low. And what we're going to do once we get them in here, we're going to cover them up for 10 minutes, and you'll see when we come back that it'll be all thick. The dumplings will be cooked through. I'll show you how to check them, and delicious. Okay, so that's the last of my dumpling. So I'm going to cover it up. I've already turned it on low, and I'm going to set my timer for 10 minutes, and we will be back then to check. I'm back. 10 minutes have passed. Let's check the dumplings. Ooh, they look done to me. I've just brought a fork over, and what you want to do is check and see that if you pull it apart a little bit. Yep, it's like a biscuit inside. It's not pasty or anything. So I'm going to call this done. I'll move this over a little bit. You can see that this is all thickened up in here. Very nice. Okay, I will show you when I put it in a plate, and I hope you enjoy the recipe. I'll come back one more time and show you once it's